So our first speaker tonight is Geoffrey Warner. Geoffrey Warner is the founder of Alchemy, WeHouse, and an avid proponent of house design. As an architect in Minneapolis firm, Warner became impatient with, in quotes, business as usual thinking. So in 1989, he did what anyone would do. He quit his job to get real hands-on experience. Literally, he constructed buildings, furnishings, lighting, and artful fabrications using a variety of materials, hand and machine, and CAD-based processes. The office he founded, Alchemy, concentrates on art and industry while maximizing the impact of modest budgets through creative construction technologies and celebrating a sense of tightwad panache. That's a quote. Alchemy's completion of the first WeHouse in 2003, then just an inexpensive prefab cabin, gained international attention as a symbol of architectural optimism. Since then, Alchemy has widened its scope, developing the WeHouse as a prefabricated answer for cabins, houses, offices, rooftop studios, and multi-unit developments, and has completed over 36 prefabricated projects around the United States. Warner's clients share cultural values, even when their politics differ. They include a Chicago art patron couple who are very influential in the National Democratic Party, a Texas House Republican candidate, and the daughter of one of the only mainstream independent party candidates to run for president in the last 20 years. Projects have been published in numerous national and international magazines, books, blogs, cyberspace slots, including the New York Times, Dwell, the Wall Street Journal, Time, Wired, Interior Design, Kiplinger's, along with MSN.com, CBS, MarketWatch, and the Huffington Post. At last count, Alchemy's website averaged 20,000 unique visitors per month. Exhibitions include Some Assembly Required, the Walker Art Center, the Home House Project, Frederick Wiseman Art Museum Design Philadelphia, A Clean Break, and Master Plan Visionary Architects in the Utopian World's Cornell Museum of Fine Arts. Warner's work with Alchemy has been awarded the 2010 AIA National Award, Player Barnhouse, 4 AIA Minnesota Honor Awards, Specs Optical Facade, Whitney Loft Renovation, and 2 AIA Home of the Month Awards for projects Linden Hills WeHouse and Goodridge Bungalow. Geoffrey Warner holds an architecture degree with the highest honors from the University of Minnesota in 1987, has taught design build classes there from 1998 to 1999. He received the Dinkaloo Traveling Fellow Award coupled with a stay at the American Academy of Rome in 1989, where he studied the detailing work of Italian architect Carlo Scarpa. He lives in St. Paul, Minnesota with his family and would really rather be kite surfing than any of the above activities. It is with great pleasure that I welcome Geoffrey Warner here today. Please give him a big round of applause.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you, David, for inviting us all here today. It's really an honor. And thanks, Evan, for, I didn't know you were going to read that whole introduction, and now I actually only have a 5-minute lecture that I need to give, which is awesome. I should plan them all exactly that way. Evan's introduction to sort of the promise of prefab and what we do every day, I think, is better stated than what I'm going to say here. But as designers, we're constantly acting as if someone's looking over our shoulder. And we only hope that people are, because we are architects, by goodness. This is the way that we're trained. Every new project is an opportunity to disseminate the big truths about the things we think we already know, to gain clarity over them and to own them. So we explore and we push for new ways of understanding the problems in hopes that maybe in the future the next project begins to solve itself. Wouldn't that be nice? Because some of the awesome things that were being revealed in today's project. Sometimes the answer to these questions is not one about pushing forward as much as to assessing the tools at hand and embracing the limitations and paring back our expectations of really what's needed. This can be a lot of work, all this trying to make things simple and keep them simple. I want to provide, I didn't know if I should present this at the beginning of the lecture or the end of the sort of this section on what we've done with the WeHouse. But to provide you some context, I want to show you what we're doing, what the projects we've done for a single client, spaced out by about 5 or 6 years, kind of while we've been doing some of our other work. And the first part of this is we just were asked to do some fixturing for a client, and they had 2 weeks or something before their store opened, and they said, hey, I want you to come and do some fixturing. I'm like, I don't really do fixturing anymore. He says, well, I'm a nice guy, and it'll be fun, and I'll let you do whatever you want. So I said, I don't want to do it. And he says, come on, do it, do it, do it. So I said, oh, all right, we're going to do it. We don't have any time. We really don't have any money. So we decided to go and salvage a bunch of stuff. And this was along the lines of a bunch of other things that we did. You can see in the foreground here these salvage wheels. There's some other kind of off-the-shelf parts. Their store logo was an oval, so we had to make ovals. And various other cast-off kind of things. Salvage is the original prefab, and it creates character where where you couldn't sort of design it in. A later project we did for them was of a different sort, and probably the opposite end of the prefabricated spectrum, and that is just more of a digital solution to. I should have worn my green shirt today. I think that was me. For doing a whole facade, well, it wasn't a whole facade. They asked us to do a sign. And why did they need a sign? You can see how big the sign was on their building. They were on the busiest shopping street just about in the city, yet you couldn't see their front store because of all these trees and everything in front. So we needed to figure out how to subjugate the building codes and do something that was a sign and not a sign. So we hit on the idea of doing really a facade for them. So we used SketchUp. I know you guys would probably just start to groan and go, SketchUp? That is so 1980 or whatever it is. But there we go. It's like that's what I know how to use, so that's what we used is SketchUp to design this 3D model. We converted it and flattened it out like any first-year student into these foldable parts, which we made in the model. Actually, our intern made it in the model in our own School of Architecture's shop. Thank you very much, Con. And fabricated it with this really loose kind of like, this is going to work, right? And this is all made out of greenhouse plastic and little handmade parts. Here you can see the final piece after it's been converted from our model form that we actually use instead of working drawings. We didn't use any working drawings for this project, only for permitting, so the guys who were downtown could like have a drawing. Because our fabricator just took our model, which already had laser cut all the little pieces. Each one of those pieces has a little number on it, so that's how they put it together on the scaffolding. We die cut. We used CNC cutting, in which we had to actually go and work with a fabricator, a big sign fabricator, in order to make these pieces work on their machine because I don't know, they couldn't make the cutter work for this stuff. So we had to go help them. We did die cut stamps there for these little custom-made little sort of flexible connectors that we used. And water jet cutting, which you can see the kind of little hingy piece there for the planter that needed to be used. And, of course, we had to use LEDs because what green project wouldn't be good without LEDs? All right, so this leads us to this project for the Wee House, which I wanted to show the whole process of I guess, the mundane aspect of this just being a normal project in which you're sitting, working at it going, okay, so I've got a client with some land. And their land cost them over $100,000. And she came to me and said, I got $50,000 to do my project. And I'm like, oh, great. How much do we have to build the house? I thought that was maybe the design fee or something. She goes, well, no, that's the whole thing. So I want you to design the house and build the house for $50,000. So instead of just saying no, it becomes an opportunity of what we're going to do. And having limitations is good. It's maybe not the best business model. But, maybe there's something that comes out of this. And, of course, you sit there and you go, great, it's just like a design studio project because it's totally unrealistic, right? So instead of saying we can't do that, we said, we can do that. Now, part of the reason we could do that is we have a small office and we had probably more time than energy. And so I said, great, how are we going to do that? We got two options. We've got the pole barn solution, which is a big open building, super cheap, and we're going to, just have a lot of space and put a little telephone booth that maybe we'll put a little, Franklin stove inside, or we're going to build a little jewel box. And let's see how we're going to build that jewel box. That site's about 2.5 hours away, so we identified a means of delivery. You can see that this is one way to deliver a house. And if you can't see that, it says land use planning out west. And I can't really decide which side of the road to put it on. And then we need an idea. So every project needs an idea. And because I'm stubborn, I always feel like, someone's looking over my shoulder and say, well, what is your idea? So our idea in this case was almost the neighboring farmstead over, which is less than a mile away, was the original Laura Ingalls Wilder homestead, or at least the one they had in Pepin. And there it is. There's my daughter, and essentially a one-room cabin. On the other side is the Donald Judd sculpture in Marfa, Texas, which I actually didn't know about at the time, but you can see that we took that very literally in terms of what we would do in terms of creating space. By the way, prefab is not an idea. Okay, it was a delivery means and not an idea. So it's just like digital fabrication. It's only as good as sort of what you're going to do with it. So our idea was to say, great, we're going to make a very small place, and we are going to put it in a factory or a warehouse and build this thing inside, and then have it done, ideally, and put it on a truck and deliver it to the site. So this was new for us. In 2002, I don't know. I wasn't aware of any prefab projects that are other than the sort of historical ones that were mentioned earlier. And in fact, we were going to build this actually in our office was in a warehouse with a workshop and a wood shop, and it's only by the grace of a really kind of crappy wall that our computers weren't covered with about an inch of dust every day. And we also are in Minnesota, and it's cold in Minnesota. It's really cold in January, and even though it's all the way warm in a year until, say, like December sometimes, you think, great, this will be fine building outside, and it'll be all good. It gets to be January, and it gets really, really cold. So it was actually a buddy of mine who had this warehouse space, and so he actually let us basically do what you see here in the corner of his workshop. It was there that we built the whole inside. We had an emphasis on, warm space without fancy materials. That's Douglas fir, with lots of the white stuff that you don't see outside here. Pedestrian materials work just fine here. This is the process for what we did. Just so you can see, it is not a secret. It is pretty straightforward. We used a moment frame. You'll see in a minute why we had to put it up on these piers. Sheathe it in, add some exterior siding, added a little porch that's bolted on, which is why we needed that steel frame. Took it apart, and then backed the truck right into the space. So now we did figure out that, of course, the truck had to fit through the doorway, and that, actually the house was going to fit back out the doorway before we started the project, which is a key when you're doing anything for the first time. We got some truckers to ship this thing a house. We said, hey, we got a kind of a big shipment to ship down about 45 minutes. Actually, it was an hour and 45 away from where the workshop is. And I said, well, how big is it? I go, yeah, it's like the size of a sort of a small house. But it'll fit this big. And we didn't really actually say house, but they shipped it down for $300, which is really nice of them. Actually helped unload it on this really tiny crane. So here's a crane, and any kind of prefab presentation ought to have plenty of crane shots. So this is kind of our prefab porn, if I can get away with saying prefab porn here. This is a much bigger crane. This was a crane which cost over $1 million, which the operator told us probably 24 times while we were standing here setting up in the -20. Literally, it's -20 because, of course, that's when you're going to end up setting your house. -20 up in northern Minnesota. And here he is setting up his digitally controlled crane that, by the way, is going to start blinking and stop moving if your house gets unbalanced. We need a big crane because there's trees and there's a road, and the road and the trees are not next to each other in terms of where, well, they are next to each other, but there's the site is on the other side. And you can see we've got the crane here now. Its tires are about 4 feet off the ground. Why is that? There's outriggers. So the outriggers are either side, and they stabilize the crane, which is really a fabulous thing. And you can see here why you need outriggers. So here's a truck-mounted crane lifting, unfortunately, this car, which forgot, I guess, parking brake. This is probably my parking brake that he's ended up in the drink here. So, you know, these cranes have certain capacities, but you do need outriggers. And one thing, so outriggers take some space, and a lot of times you'll forget the fact that it's going to take a 30-foot round circle to put these outriggers on there, and you need them, like let's say on a road, you actually need them on both sides, not just one side. The cranes are nice. They pick up right over trees, as you can see there. This is a great shot because you can see the HVAC boots that are going to be literally just spooged on with this big wad of silicone. They basically got an upper and lower module. They're going to smush together here. And we literally, the way they do them in different ways in terms of putting the HVAC together. But this thing is basically it's like a la Frank Gehry's window. You know, he says the only window that doesn't leak in my house is that one I spooged on with silicone. Well, so that's how they put the silicone. It's just like, you put a house on top. It's heavy, fits. It's not going anywhere at that point. The cool thing about this is that, so we set this whole house starting, about 8 in the morning, and by noon, we get to deliver the mail. So I'm taking a couple pictures, and here's this woman. She comes by. She delivers the mail. She turns around. She looks at me. I go, hey, did you notice there wasn't a house there yesterday? That's what she said. Just kept on going. I'm like, she's a mail person. All right. So that was an urban job. A great reason to do prefab is you've got not so urban sites. And this is out in Marfa, Texas. This is actually when I found out about the Donald Judd stuff. They said, we want our house to look like this thing from Donald Judd. And I said, well, our house already looks like that. So they're like, uh-huh. So, except they were from Texas. So there's like, yeah, y'all. Which I found out actually, the plural to y'all is all y'all. Which I didn't even know that either. So again, my job here today is to show you that if I can do it, really, I mean, anybody here can do that because our resources were very limited. And you're looking at the team here. You know, my dog, she was always part of the team as well. You can see Stephanie, the owner. And Lucas, who's an architect, hand-on architect, who's basically just he and I working with Scott in this dusty, awful office that we had. And we eventually ended up with the Wee House. And there it is on the left. And we met our budget because there was no electricity or running water. And as you can see over to the right, that's the Wee House. So the day after you go, oh, right, that was great. I'm never doing that again. And about 2 days later you think, oh, I guess I could do something like that again. And so you decide to call up the newspaper and say, hey, we did kind of an interesting project. What do you think about that? Maybe publishing it for us now because we'd really like you to publish it. And we sent it to Met Home. This was sort of almost pre-internet, and internet publishing wasn't a big deal. Met Home picked it up, and we kind of thought they're going to do a big glossy spread. This is going to be awesome. Well, they didn't. They gave us a picture about yay big, and it was in their holiday gift guide. So right here you've got your Braun shaver or whatever, and a fan, and a house for $50,000. Well, sometimes somebody else has to tell you what you probably should already know. That it's like, hey, there might be actually a business out of this, and maybe there's somebody else that would want to have that same house. Because you put all that work into it, maybe you could do it again. And so we thought about that, and we said, okay, so a holiday gift guide might be the best place that we could have our house. And actually other people, the responses we got from all around the country for this little kind of throwaway thing was phenomenal. So they'll look at this thing, which here it is, and they'll go, great, can you do a dental office like that? And I'm like, a dental office? What about that says dental office? Can I do a 3,000 square foot one of those? And you're like, sure, that sounds great, you know. So we had to figure out what it is that we're actually going to do. And the first thing is like, well, we're going to need a, number one, we're going to figure out how to build these things. But before that, we're going to need a logo, because we're going to use our logo on all these presentations that we do when we go and talk to people. And we're going to be a little bit apologetic and sort of sheepish that there's this logo on all the slides that we're going to show you, because we're too lazy to take them off. So I'll apologize for that right now. And you can tell that we're not graphic designers, because here's our logo. So there it is. There's the house. There's the logo. It's not hard, remember? It's not hard. You guys can do it. The other thing we wanted to do is we wanted to make it good, fast, and cheap, because we are from Minnesota, and we are practical people with a healthy distrust of anything too fancy or expensive. It's just like we just don't do expensive there, unfortunately, for our practice. That gets back to the business thing, which maybe we won't talk about right at the moment. We also found out, because again, we're from Minnesota and we just don't get around, that there's something called a modular factory that builds houses. And here it is. This is what they build. And we said, well, that's way harder than what we want to build, we thought. And they've got low labor costs. They've got materials indoors, safe and dry. It's efficient. They put it down a whole kind of assembly line. And that's what they build. It looks just like all the other essentially factory-built, site-built houses that are out in the suburbs that we see all the time. Because of these factories, it means that Lucas and Scott and my dog Sienna didn't have to truck all the way around like we did on the first project, and we could build in the whole country. That's going to be a great idea. Well, it is a great idea, except you have to find the factories that are actually going to work with you. So we called lots and lots and lots of factories. And Joe can probably tell you a lot more about this later. But we had to establish and kind of goad and threaten various factories. It's like, hey, we'd love you to do this project. It'll be really easy. And we send them a picture of something that's a square box, and they go, that'll be easy. We can do that. And we'd start working with them on that basis. I'm going to show you a bunch of photos of basically about the factory process and how that all works. And this is what it looks like. This is a typical modular house. The insulation is on the outside of the house. That is something you should not do on a site-built project. The roofs are potentially, mostly gable roofs, but they'll fold down, as you can see here. You can actually extend decks out the end to do platforms, as you see there. The sheetrock's all in, all the wiring's done from the outside, the connections to rim joists. You can put on siding if you want to. Here's siding and a roof that's all folded down. In-floor heat, we put in-floor heat in there. I mean, it's cold in Minnesota. We like to have heat in our houses. And actually, I think just about every factory we worked with, we've said, in-floor heat is something you should be doing. And they've done it, and they said, "Oh, that's good because we have such low volume or low markup kind of method of doing markups on our houses that something like in-floor heat actually increases their margins." On the site, you have upper and lower modules. You can finish off the siding. You need to leave a little bit of a gap there between the two modules. And here's the siding. The siding is very dusty. Here you can see this fold-down roof. And once it gets on site, you basically just flip it down. It's hinged. You can actually have a vented roof, which is what we have here. And, that's it. Those guys were actually, that's about a 3-foot roof. And they're actually, they actually went out and walked on that, and it didn't have any, sort of supports underneath, which we weren't really wild about until we found out that it actually held them, which was actually excellent. Here's the siding. We actually really try to get as much stuff done in the factory as possible. And so we just measured really carefully so that when these things came together, the siding would actually fit. And in this case, it did, which we were very happy about. Other thing is when you get two-story houses, you've got a lot of sheetrock and you've got holes in the sheetrock. And so these accesses up into the second floor, or sort of this rim joist on the top of the first floor, is where you can put all your utilities. There's a little sort of space in there. This is the protective wrap from shipping. At mating lines between two modules as they come together, one typically leaves the factory edge of the sheetrock on either side. That 4-foot piece just kind of slides right in there, and then you basically just tape that all off. You can see the HVAC ducting that gets tucked in to that same spot. And then you've got wire connectors. You all listed wire connectors that put all these things together. So it's all, I mean, that's all part of the standard factory process. Invariably you'll get a local inspector who says, well, what are those? Those aren't UL listed. And you go, yes, they are. And they go, no, they're not. Show us that thing. And so you have to like run down and get all these kind of things going on here. So we created so that was the process for getting these things. That's how modular factories work. And what we wanted to do is then create a sort of a system to basically take all the work that we had in terms of selecting some siding and interior stuff and basically sort of pre-select. There's a lot of time and energy that goes into selecting those kind of things in a lot of different projects. So how can you take some things that you've put all this research into that you can make work and that are cost effective, because again we want it cheap, fast, and good, and just provide enough flexibility in those. And so these are the two kind of sidings we've been using. And then a slate of flooring and countertop kind of stuff. Again, people really don't want to select everything under the earth. They want to have some choices already made for them. We used to use bamboo a lot. Bamboo is very sustainable. It grows really fast. Comes from China. Okay, we are in the United States. We decided, it's probably not the most sustainable thing, since I got white oak that's just created down the road there, literally, and I can stain that in all these kind of nice waxed finishes that are a living kind of finish that can be renewed. I never have to sand my floors. So we basically said, great, we're going to basically make these kind of almost couture floors. We're going to be able to get them to you for the same cost as some of these bamboos and things like that. And, the alternative is going for stuff that costs like $20 a square foot from, sort of a Manhattan showroom. We're choosing some pretty straightforward tiles, some different kind of options, a bunch of fixtures that are, nice but not super high-end, but the result is actually having something that, can be either high-end or sort of lowish end, if you will, at the same time. There's only so many kitchens you're going to end up with. These are just a couple examples of, the same kind of kitchen, a couple of different kitchen layouts working in a bunch of different floor plans. So we're trying to just take all that off the plate of a bunch of people and then communicate this as a system. The next few slides are about our attempts to do exactly that. So how can we go and create a whole bunch of house designs that sort of go from that original wee house to, say, dental office to that 3,000 square foot, and communicate to people what exactly we're actually doing. So our first idea and way to do this, and this is, you can tell the graphic intensity of the work we did here. We were not using 3D here. These are floor plans, and you can probably see this a little bit, but these are single-use modules, which were either like all-in-one. It's essentially like a mobile home, but like a nice mobile home. Or they were modules that were used as living rooms and kitchens, and then other ones as sleeping rooms and bathrooms. And you combine those. So you combine those in different ways. On the right here, you move the windows around, you change the siding, and that's the idea. And that's actually, what a great idea. That's totally flexible. Look at all the stuff we can do. Well, what happened is people come to us and they say, I want this and I want that and I want this, and then we're going to do this and it'll be great. And you're like, we're spending a lot of time moving all these things around because you have to respond to the site. And so we said, great, I guess we need some houses that we design that we're going to kind of communicate to people. as well. One of the other things I want to say is that we're trying to pre-price these things so that people know how much they're actually going to be spending, less their land and their utility costs, so that when they start the project, their project is going to cost at the end what you say it's going to cost at the beginning. Now that's a very difficult thing to do and pretty optimistic, but the nice thing is that by prefabrication and working with established factories that you've already kind of vetted that stuff out and you know what the materials cost ahead of time, you can actually say instead of $300 a square foot or $100 a square foot, you can say that's going to cost $129,000, not including these things. It's a very, very powerful thing. And by the way, it's really helpful no matter whether you've got a lot of money or whether you've got a really tight-wad panache budget. That's going to be important in terms of communicating and growing a trustful relationship with your clients and your contractors as well. So here's some of the modules then. We had plans and then we kind of gave ideas to these houses. Again, these houses have ideas. This is called, the Mobius down here in the middle, and there's sort of an idea about that. We bumped that up. We had single-use modules on the top. Down in the middle of the thing, there's like an X house. There's sort of side-by-side and tall houses that do various things. And still almost sort of too much stuff, but this is an example of this split pair idea, which this simple split pair idea of just a sleeping module and a living module making a house ended up being this house. Now this house was totally blown up for people in Texas. It's 16-foot wide modules by 64-foot long. It's got 15-foot wide by 9-foot tall sliding glass doors that we customized to fit the still prefab production method. And that idea and that process basically came from this same sort of system I just showed you. More recently, we said, well, let's just scale back and let's just create these things as just really small, medium, large houses. And let's see how that works, because people are basically coming to us and saying, look, you guys are architects. You guys do good work. I mean, hopefully they are coming to us for that reason. And we basically want a big one. We want one with 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms or whatever. And it's going to be something like that, but let's make it work. How does that work? The issue is any site, and this is a diagram that we have just on site design, again, part of our brochure, but basically says, look, you're going to have different ways of dealing with urban sites and suburban sites. And this, does my clicker coming through? Yes, sorry about that. So this is basically the same house as this. But one of them faces sort of south, and the long end of this house faces south, and the other one, the end of the house faces south. And the solar axis and the way you lay out the house is going to be really quite a bit different, even though it's sort of the same house. This is shown in both of these 4x4 houses, which are one's facing sideways, one's facing the endways, and you can see as the built thing really looks a lot like this. By the way, this house here we did on spec for a realtor. Put it in this urban site, as you saw earlier. It was bought by, so we're like, oh, okay, this is good. The house next door was done by a really good local architect, renovation, gabled house. The renovation took like a year and a half. Our project took like 3 months. And it was all built from the ground up as a tear down of a really small house and then rebuilt. But we were kind of wondering how it would fit in. And, you can see, because we do renovation, we do the exact same renovation as the one next door. Oops. It's interesting to see that those things actually can work the way you anticipated them doing as well. So, this whole process here is sort of talking about these things today is really about design as a restraining device. How can you set limitations for yourself that are going to cause you to get to the end line with everybody sort of understanding and knowing what's going on and appreciating that. And so here are just a couple pictures. I mean, this is not a very fancy interior. It's a lot of white stuff, basically painting the trim white. A nice door. That light fixture costs about $35. Works great when we're not using recessed lighting. We've got a bunch of kitchens. We can put wood on the ceiling if we want. We can paint the house different colors. This one, has a insect screen / performance curtain that's all around it, which was kind of neat. It's a single module house. The clients who are in San Diego were just thrilled because the windows were so darn awesome. They've never seen windows that nice in San Diego before ever. And we're like, they're just Anderson windows. I was like, well, no one ever uses anything that sturdy around here. And again, this is just like we chose those because they're, that's basically part of all of our houses. That's wherever we've got big glasses, it's chosen because the 8-foot window by 8-foot window is a really inexpensive way to get glass. We don't have any trim around there, and it basically just kind of plows through and is, you know, effective and inexpensive and elegant at the same time. These are just a couple shots of basically just the different kinds of things, then these scaling up and down. And I'm just going to leave with this last one because I want to be respectful for time here. This is basically sort of the direction this all of our houses should be going now. Is basically they should be solar powered. You know, they should be at least insulated for the, you know, the future and a bunch of green stuff. But as I said, I think I'm just going to stop there right now. Thank you.